That's gross. Hi guys, I am on my way to auto parts store. I'm gonna work on Mr. Dose tonight, and if you're new to my channel, you don't know what the hell a Mr. Dose is, I'll put a link up above to a bunch of videos on this project car. But I'm gonna get some stuff at the auto parts store. I just figured I'd treat myself to some tea right now, but we will get working this evening when it gets a little bit cooler, and I'll get the swamp cooler going and stuff in there. So I was just outside trying to even out my farmer's tan. I need to just full on lay out there, because I got a bad farmer's tan. But let's go in the garage and start working on Mr. Dose. I think it's cooled off in there now. Alright, so earlier I came out here because I was reading all the comments that you guys posted on the last video where I worked on Mr. Dose trying to fix this coolant leak at the water pump, and I didn't check this at the time when I was working on it, but I started pulling out each individual bolt that holds the water pump on to see if any of them go into a coolant jacket. And the first two I pulled up at the top, they were bone dry. So I put a little bit of RTV on the threads, just a tiny bit, put them back in. And then I pulled out the bottom left corner where it was the most wet. As soon as I pulled that bolt out, coolant started shooting right out. That second hole that's green in the center, that is the bolt hole where the coolant leak was originating from this area. And I just drained all the coolant. I got it in my mouth. And you can still see there's coolant coming out of this hole. So that means that bolt goes into a water jacket. And I never did anything to this hardware when I installed the water pump. I simply just put it in and torqued it. So I don't think it's the gasket that's leaking. I believe it's actually because it's coming out of this bolt hole. So I need to put some thread sealer on here to stop it from coming out, in theory, I think. Because the car is jacked up in the rear, I opened the drain on the lower half of the radiator up here in the front, and then I took the radiator cap off in the rear of the car, and because it's at an angle, it should drain everything out of the system. A couple of you guys in the comment section actually pointed out that I should dump the green 50/50 coolant that was in the car and switch to the Toyota Isin formula. So that's what I'm gonna do. This is so crazy. It's been an hour now since I drained the coolant. It's dry. There's nothing coming out of the radiator anymore. I popped two of the coolant hoses, the main coolant hoses, off the lower side of the engine off. No coolant comes out of them. But this bolt hole that was leaking on the water pump will not stop dripping coolant. I have no idea where this coolant is coming from at this point. This is crazy. So I'm gonna go to the store and I'm gonna get a can of brake clean, so that way I can try to clean this bolt hole so I can get some sealant in there and try to get this thing to stop leaking. Okay, so here's the deal. The coolant is no longer seeping out of the water pump. There is a slight trickle coming down the side of it now, but it's like so much less than it was. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of this thread sealer, and I'm going to put it on the bolt and then put it into the hole and tighten it down and see if that stops the leak. It's like 10 o'clock at night or something. I don't know what time it is. It's like 10-ish. I'm going to just let it cure overnight and then flush the remaining green coolant out of the system and fill it up with red coolant tomorrow if this fixes it. So I'm gonna do this real quick and then go to sleep. And we will continue in the morning. Moment of truth. I want to see if this thing leaked overnight. I put a paper towel under it, or shop towel, to see if it would drip. It's dry. Yay! I'm so happy. What I need to do now is I'm going to go to the auto parts store yet again, because the flaring kit I got for the clutch line is wrong. I need to use a double flare, and the one I got won't create the correct type of flare. So back off to the auto parts store. Ta-da! I got the right one this time. So double flaring kit. I need to take the garden hose from the swamp cooler real quick, stick it in the radiator cap filler neck area, and I'm going to try to catch as much as I can in a drip pan, but this is gonna be really tough. But I'm going to flush as much of the coolant system out with a garden hose as I can. It's the only way I can do this. It's all I have to flush it with. So I'll try to get the rest of that green coolant out and then start putting everything back together. So here it goes. Looks fairly clear. Looks good. Gymnastics, Sarah, go for the goal. So it started leaking again. It wasn't leaking for a while, and then I bled the coolant system, and now it's leaking again out of the same spot. I guess I gotta pull it all back apart again. This sucks. Good morning. Okay, so it's the next morning. Yesterday, I had to stop myself working on this car. I had to call it quits. I wanted to get this engine put back together and the car running and try to make some progress on this video. I feel like if I'm spending days on single bolts or pumps or just stupid parts on the car that aren't an exciting upgrade or anything, that in the grand scheme of YouTube for automotive YouTubing, it's crap, you know what I mean? I expect better of myself, and I was getting really hard on myself about getting this car done, and I thought yesterday, you know what, it's not leaking that bad anymore. I'm just gonna put the car back together and at least try to get it to run and then address the leak after I get it running. And I had to stop myself because that goes against my personal work ethics as a mechanic, and I don't agree with cutting corners like that. So I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna get this engine put back together and we're at least gonna try to get the first start done on this thing, and it's not leaking that bad, I'll address it later. So I started trying to get the passenger side motor mount in there, and to do so you have to raise and lower the engine, get it just right to try to fish this motor mount in there because there's such tight clearances on the passenger side. So in doing so, I was going back and forth to the hoist, and I ended up getting my arm caught between the engine and the frame rail because I was trying to push the engine to get that thing in there. And I got really frustrated and I got really emotional, and I was caught up in my head. I was like, you know what, I gotta make progress, this is on YouTube, and I just had to say, you know what, screw that. I had to stop. And luckily last night I texted my ex-boyfriend Charlie. I was like, dude, I don't have anyone else to help me, especially if I'm doing stuff involving moving a 500 or 600 pound engine and transmission assembly around. If I get hurt, there was no one here. My roommate wasn't here. She's been super busy with work and stuff. So I was like, I need help. And luckily he came over last night and he helped me out. And when he got here, we realized, you know what, screw that, let's do this the right way. So he helped me. We got the water pump out of the car and found out
it's not the water pump gasket.
It's not?
No.
What is it?
This water pump housing has a gasket behind it, between it and the block.
Okay.
We didn't ever replace that.
No, I never took it out.
Well, it moves.
Oh, really?
So that gasket's probably junk. Yeah, look, it moves separate from the block, so we need to take that off.
The only thing that's in there is 2 O-rings. I looked it up on the...
Well, then the O-ring's probably bad.
You think so? So if you see right here, this housing that I'm pointing to, that right there is where the, I think it'd be called the water impeller for the water pump. It rides inside that cavity, and then right here is just a coolant jacket, and then it was leaking out of right here. But this actual casing that you see sticking off the side of the engine block is a separate, diverse piece. This whole entire housing actually sits inside the engine block. So the leak was coming from behind this housing. There's O-rings inside here, and it was leaking between the seam of the engine block and this casing. So it looked like it was coming through this bolt hole because there is a coolant jacket behind there, and I slowed the leak by plugging it, but it was still coming out. So that's where I'm at, and I'm very thankful to have such an awesome ex-boyfriend. I got my pipe cutter and about ready to go cut some pipe. I don't think there's an innuendo there. If there is, that's just gross. And there you go. I cut it back far enough so it's straight now, and I can flare it, put this fitting on there, and I may be able to just reach it with the soft line as is. I may not have to add any hard line. So we shall see. There. This is the fitting from under the car. Now I want to try to use it, but it's kind of rounded off. I don't know if you can tell. It's a little rounded off on the corners. I was gonna try to reuse it, but I do have these fittings that came on the stock line that I got from the auto parts store. The only thing that's different is the end of the fitting. This is not threaded and this is. I just went to 3 different stores. I went to AutoZone, O'Reilly's, and Ace Hardware trying to get a fitting for this clutch line just because the one that's on there is messed up. I got skunked. Nowhere had an M12 fitting. I think it's an M12, but everywhere had standard. They didn't have metric fittings. So I gotta get creative and see if I can fix this fitting that goes to the clutch line. I figured I'd do a practice run real quick before I get under the car and flare the line because I haven't done it in a couple of years. So I use this piece of tubing that I bought to practice on, and I have a couple little burrs in the center I need to clean up still. But I don't know, I think it works fine. Time to do a double flare. Gymnastic Sarah. Here goes nothing. Let's get this protective coating cut off. That's gross. This is so hard to do, all the blood is running out of my arms. Okay, so as you can see, I have the line inside my flaring tool, and then I got my little fitting on there, and then I got this clamp down on there. So I'm gonna do the first part of the double flare by smushing this little dude into the line, and then I'm gonna take that thing out and then put the, I don't know the name of these tools, I just know it's a flaring kit. So whatever, I'm gonna take this thing after I remove that little tip and do the second part of the double flare on the line. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I'm bad at explaining this. I don't know the name of each individual component of the flaring kit. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but this side of the tool started bowing out. Like it started spreading while I was trying to flare the line, and it actually popped off right there. You see how it's damaged on this part? As I was tightening it down, it literally just popped off that way because this thing spread. So I need a new flaring tool. This one is garbage, it doesn't work. It worked fine when I did a practice dry run here at my toolbox just to make sure I had flaring down because it'd been a while. Worked fine. Apparently this is a one-time use application tool because I went to do it under the car and the thing spread and popped off. I can't get anything accomplished. I'm just gonna call this video a wrap. Sorry. I need to regroup, get some more tools, and I'm gonna try to get some help over here to finish this thing up to try to make some progress because I just need a second person here to help out, especially with raising and lowering the engine. So I will have some TT content coming up for you next. I'm gonna start working on that car because that's so far been a lot better luck than this turd. So I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye.